The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to On Cue. I'm Stephanie Passingham, filling in for Eric Olson. On today's program, we're going to talk books and bullies. Stay with us for On Cue.
From KSMQ Television in Austin, this is On Cue, connecting interesting issues and interesting people. On Cue.
Bullying is a major concern for parents, school personnel, and of course, kids. We're more aware of the damage it can cause. Kevin Strauss joins us today to help us identify bullying and find ways to address it. Welcome, Kevin. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
So you are also a storyteller, and this is one of the tools that you use. Tell us how you got involved in this subject.
Sure. Well, I've been doing storytelling programs for about 20 years at schools and libraries all around the Midwest, and realized the more schools I went into that teachers and staff were talking about this problem of bullying at school, that kids were picking on other kids, and there were lots of problems going on in the school. And so in looking at the sorts of programs I do, I did folktale programs, and I realized that a lot of those programs gave examples of larger villains, whether it was a troll or a giant or that sort of character harassing a hero. It's usually smaller. And the hero had to use their brains to solve a problem. And I realized, well, you know, stories have been used for thousands of years to teach us how to solve problems. Maybe there's a way to use storytelling to help address this issue of bullying. Great
idea, and very non-threatening. You're not saying this kid and that kid, it's a troll and a hero. That sounds good. So bullying, we seem to hear a lot more about it. Is it more prevalent, or are we just becoming more aware of what bullying is?
We're probably becoming more aware. It's hard to know, you know, long-term over the last 50 or 100 years whether the incidence of bullying has gone up. But certainly over the last few decades, the data we're finding now is that a lot of bullying is never reported. And so
they just don't say.
Right, yeah, you don't know that it's happening. And now, as you're hearing about it in the news, more schools are taking a closer look and learning that there are some issues. It used to be there were some assumptions about bullying. You know, it didn't happen in good schools, or it didn't happen in suburban schools. You know, that we had these myths about bullying. And we're realizing more and more that bullying happens everywhere. There isn't a concerted effort to address it by the school, by parents, and by students. Those three groups working.
So, and you say it's not typical necessarily, or there's not this profile, so it's not a boy who's bigger than everybody else, who is always a troublemaker. I mean, give us a sense of who can be a bully and what constitutes bullying.
Sure, anyone can be a bully. All the ideas we used to have about bullying, being a larger kid and a kid that doesn't have any friends, we've found in looking at issues really isn't true. There are often bullies that are very popular and have lots of friends, which can be a challenge because those friends help out with the bullying sometimes. It could be a boy or a girl. The genders, there is sort of a difference in how children might bully. Boys, you know, on average, might be a little more physical in their bullying. Girls, on average, might be a little more social. They'll use words and relationships to bully other kids.
Where most often does bullying take place?
Bullying is most common everywhere there isn't strong adult supervision in a school. And so we often, you know, in surveys, we used to think it happened on the bus. And schools that install cameras on their bus suddenly see bullying incidents drop off because they realize there's a lot of supervision. Playgrounds, lunchrooms are also places where it seems to happen. There is adult supervision in those places, but it's a small number of adults for a large number of students. And people that want to choose to be a bully are very careful. They know what the rules are, they know when they're being watched, and they know very carefully how to bully someone else. It's actually a planned process. They've sort of gone through the mind. It's not an accidental, you know, shoving someone or something that's a certain moment where you decide to pick on somebody else. It's really a planned experience. And so
it's not really an escalation of maybe they're playing a sports game and tempers flare and somebody gets punched necessarily. It's on purpose with an intended target?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly, yeah. There are a lot of different definitions of bullying, but one is, one that's been used by a lot of different professionals in the field, is that it is repeated intentional abuse, either physical or verbal or emotional, from someone that has a lot of power against someone who doesn't have very much power. And that's really the big defining incident. When you think about the old measure we used to have of bullying, it was a big strong kid beating up at a small one. And that is an imbalance of power. You know, the small kid can't physically defend him or herself. But there are lots of kinds of power. There's size and strength, but there's also social status in the school. A really, really popular kid has a lot more social power than a younger kid or a less popular kid. And so it's not just a size issue. There could be other kinds of power.
How do you identify it? Teachers, you know, in the classroom, parents at home, you know, leaders in church groups, how can you tell the difference between, you know, an unkind remark and somebody who's actually being a bully?
The important thing to look at is behavior over time.
Okay.
So in an individual shove when somebody's angry, an individual mean word isn't technically bullying by the definition that a lot of people talk about, because it's repeated abusive behavior. And the abusive behavior is designed to control someone else's behavior. And so you're trying to control someone else by intimidating them or threatening them, those sorts of things. And so the challenge with bullying, of course, is that it isn't reported very often.
Right.
And so if we had more reporting, it'd be easier to track these details.
The bully victim is embarrassed, I would assume.
Right, right. Victims are often
afraid.
embarrassed. They often feel like you know, they deserved whatever the behavior was. Bullies are phenomenally good at, people that are effective at using bullying behavior are phenomenally good at getting away with it. And so they will intimidate someone and say, you know, if you tell anybody, it'll be worse for you next time. And so really, you know, can think about a schoolyard bully as using many of the same tactics as the mafia. I mean, those same sort of tools are equally effective. Not to the extent that the mafia does, but that intimidation, and so there's very little reporting. And so that becomes a challenge. I think the first line of defense, of course, as parents, is to, as you talk with your children, you want to encourage them to be kind toward other people, and also if they see problems, to report them. And one of the most famous tools that it feels like bullies use is the whole talk about, you better not report, you're tattling if you report on me doing this mean thing.
Okay, so it's okay to get a third party involved, or to be that third party and say, you know, hey, Mrs. whatever your teacher's name is, I saw this happen on the playground and I think it was bullying.
Critically important. It's critically important because of the imbalance in power between a bully and a target. The target will never be in a position to be able to defend him or herself. That's bullies are very careful on choosing a target that can't defend him or herself.
Reporting it to a parent. We were talking earlier. You mentioned something about getting the parents together of the two kids impacted is not always a good idea in terms of being part of the solution or resolving this conflict.
Right, right. Some folks, when their child maybe is the target of bullying, a lot of emotions come up. And you want to protect your child, of course, every parent does. And so you think maybe going over to the house of the child that was harassing your child, maybe a solution, talk it out with the parent. Usually, though, that doesn't always go as well as we think it might, because the parents might get into an argument about what the behavior was and who was at fault, and you might end up, you know, in a shouting match with another parent. And so, especially if it's an event that happened at school, you really want to get the school involved.
Okay.
And more now schools have developed good procedures to help deal with these situations. The first step as a parent, you know, the first thing you want to do if your child comes into you and says, you know, this happened at school, or you notice your child coming home with torn clothes or a bruise they can't explain, you know, it'll be hard for them to explain it to you, but if they do finally explain what happened, and any kind of attack, whether it's bullying or not, is something to deal with.
Right.
But if it seems like it was a situation where the child, you know, has been repeatedly abused by one or a small group of people, it could clearly be bullying. And the first thing your child will often say is, please don't tell anybody. You know, you can't tell anybody. I'm so embarrassed. And really, you can't fall into that trap as a parent. You really, you need to tell your child right away. The first thing is that you're sorry that it happened to them, that nobody deserves that behavior.
Right, it's not something they did.
Right. And also, you have to tell them that you can't keep it a secret, because if you keep it a secret, that gives the bully the opportunity to hurt you over and over again, and it'll never stop. And often children get nervous about that, and then so you can reassure them by saying, we're going to talk about it and figure out a way together. And a good step when working with schools is to talk with your classroom teacher first of all, because often it's a classmate in the same classroom.
Someone they know well.
And sometimes that's a great solution. There are wonderful teachers who are very good and trained in dealing with these situations. If for whatever reason the solution, that doesn't seem to solve the problem, then the next step, of course, is the principal or assistant principal,
Yep.
and then depending on how things are going, maybe talking to the counselor or some other staff. But you always, as a parent, want to keep advocating for your child.
And keep that team of adults aware and paying attention to what that situation is. And in our area, we have lots of schools who have taken advantage of your storytelling programs too, to help kids identify what bullying is and what they can do to help prevent it. You're a wealth of information. Thank you so much for kind of opening this dialogue and reminding parents and teachers and kids that they really need to talk about it and get some help. Thank you so much, Kevin.
You're welcome.
All right, well, we'll be right back with more On Cue.
You can watch On Cue anytime by visiting the KSMQ TV website, ksmq.org.
Welcome back. Ann Hokanson is the director of the Austin Public Library, and not only can she help you pick out great books, she can do it in French or Slovak. She's such an interesting person, and it's great to have her here with us today. Welcome back.
Well, thank you
Nice
for
to see
having
you.
me. Yeah.
So, you are a foreign language specialist. How in the world did you learn Slovak, of all things? That's not really common around here.
No, in fact, about 5 million people in the world speak Slovak, so not so common. I learned it while I was in the Peace Corps. So my husband and I went in the Peace Corps in the late 80s.
Great. And what did you do there? Was that a tie to your being a librarian, starting that career?
It ended up being a tie. I had been working as an archivist at the State Historical Society in Wisconsin, and when I went to Slovakia, I was assigned to a district library, and I helped them work through some of their management challenges during the transition from the different governmental structures, and realized that public libraries was where I was meant to be.
That's where was that? How different are they from other countries to what you find here in the United States?
Oh, I don't know how it is now, but at the time it was very much a top-down management structure, and for example, every book that was published in Slovakia was automatically given to each of the public libraries.
Tell us a little bit about what you can find at the library today, because a lot of people may still think of it as you go in, you check out a book, or maybe you go in and read the newspaper, but the libraries really have a lot to offer.
Right. I think of public libraries as being sort of that third pillar for education. We have our public education system and our secondary education system, but the public library is really where people can go for lifelong learning, anything that you're interested in. So I was learning to speak some Italian for a recent trip off of our online language service that's provided through the library, so I could download audio language right onto my iPad and study it wherever I wanted. That was free.
Cool.
We have a live homework help service where students can go in and do a chat session with a qualified tutor in their subject area, for example. You can do genealogy research or get wiring diagrams from your car. All of that you can do just without even walking into our building.
Wow, and you can do that all online, so you don't even have to come to the library
No,
anymore.
you just need a library card.
Very interesting, very interesting. The change in books going digital, has that changed what people read, how they read? How do we still keep books? And I'm old-fashioned, I love to have a book in my hand. How do we still keep books in our lives when everything's going digital?
Well, I guess I think of a book as being a lengthy amount of writing on a topic. So for me, a book can be digital or printed on paper or exist over time in many formats. So I think we'll always have books in our lives. How we manage to carry them around with us might change. In the library world right now, we're putting a lot of focus on making sure that we have access to ebooks, but it's a very, very small part still of our overall circulation.
So people are still getting books?
Yes,
from
I
the
think
library.
so. And in fact, I think that people are using ebooks in a different sort of way, maybe to consume some things that weren't available to them maybe so easily in some other ways. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at the top 100 ebooks sold on Amazon.com, but it's quite a collection of things, and I would say many more of them. If we had them in the library, and we don't have very many of them, they would sort of be shelved with the 50 Shades of Grey books.
Oh,
yes.
All right.
So a little bit different, top 100 ebook-wise than print.
And is ebook, do you have to have, is it difficult for you in a library to match up the format? Does an iPad read a book differently than a Nook, it seems like everyone's got their competing piece of equipment. Is that a challenge?
It is a challenge, but even more than that, the big challenge is what we call digital rights management. So having the publisher allow a public library access to a book to be able to match it up with readers. Because of course, if we buy a physical book, we're able to re-loan that to as many people as we want to, but we're limited in the amount of time. We only have 1 copy or 2 copies, whereas an ebook, of course, the potential is there for us to loan it to everyone all at once. So to be able to sort of ratchet that down and make it fair for everyone concerned is the biggest challenge, more than the formats.
More than the formats themselves. Okay, that's right. Because how would you, once they download it, it's on their piece?
It is, but you're actually downloading, or you have 2 pieces of information. You have the actual file with the words in it, the book, and then you have the permission to read it.
Okay.
So it's the permission to read it that has the little timer on it.
So let's talk books.
All right.
What are you recommending that people read these days? And maybe pick a couple categories. And I'd love for you to include children's books too, because that's all I read these days.
Okay.
I'm done with adult books for a while.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of new things out there. I always have to kind of think about my own things and my own reading because I go see so many books. I do have a copy of The Casual Vacancy at home right now. That's Rowling's new book for adults instead of just her.
Kind of has had some mixed reviews.
Definitely. And
what did you think?
Well, I'm halfway through it, and I purposefully chose to not read any reviews. I didn't want to have a preconception, but I would say I'm pretty mixed. I'm enjoying her language. I'm enjoying reading something that's situated in another country. It's really a chance to read about another culture, a whole other social problems situation type thing. Okay. So I'm liking that a lot. I don't know if U.S. readers are going to just glom onto that one. It's a little slow moving for me so far, and there's a lot that we have to work pretty hard to understand because it's not our culture.
Do you think people are going to box her in as a children's writer and not let her take on some more challenging topics?
I think her biggest challenge to break into the U.S. adult market will be to write something that's relevant to U.S. readers, and I'm not certain that this book is relevant.
Okay.
So I have that. I'm in the middle of reading The Warmth of Other Suns, the epic story of America's Great Migration. That's the story of African American migration up to the north from the south, from the 60s onward. And I'm finding that very fascinating. It's told through some personal stories and excellent historical writing. So a real way to connect with a part of our recent past.
And would you consider that nonfiction then?
Definitely, yeah. That's a nonfiction book. I did just read Gone Girl. That's on the bestseller lists everywhere. Have you had a chance to read that one yet? That was very exciting, and I'm afraid that it's got so many spoilers in it that about all I would really say is if you enjoy mysteries, which it certainly is, and contemporary fiction.
Well, those are some great selections for adults. What about young people, young readers? You know, we've got the classics, we've got the Junie B. Jones or the Magic Tree House. We read those a lot at our house. What would you recommend for young people to engage them in good reading these days?
Certainly. Well, we always like to let kids choose their own books as much as possible, and so maybe because of that we've stumbled on the Horrible Henry series. I have a son named Henry, and so that's a big hit, and they're very funny. They're very much in the style of Junie B. Jones, in that Henry is truly horrible and Perfect Peter is his brother, and so they carry on quite a bit, and that's a nice bridge to larger chapter books for kids. We still can't get enough of The Lightning Thief. Still have have lots of people coming in for that, for kids. And of course we have the Maud Hart Lovelace books.
Right.
So
very
we
much
always
a
have
classic.
a display of those. Well, the Betsy Tacy series, but then also that's an award. So the kids get to vote for their very favorite books, and those books get chosen every year.
Got
so we
it.
have a big display for those, so that's a great place to go for kids' books. And one of my favorites from last year for that was How to Steal a Dog.
How to Steal a Dog.
How to Steal a Dog, written from the point of view of a homeless girl. So very good book.
Interesting. And for a little bit older readers?
For a little bit older readers, kind of that high school age, I just went through a series called Uglies. Starts out with a self-named book, Uglies. It's a series of 4 books, dystopian fiction. If you can't get enough of the Hunger Games, you jump into this.
So this
Can't put it down. Can't put it down. Just great.
Great.
So quite a lot of fun.
Sounds good. And if there were one book at the top of your list, and I'm thinking for adults again, and what would you be recommending? They've got one book they need to read in 2013. What's it going to be?
Oh, 2013. I think it's probably going to be some of those genre busters that are coming out from some of those big name authors. They're starting to write some different things. But the book that I can't stop thinking about isn't new at all. It was written before, between the 2 wars, and it's After Midnight by Irmgard Kuhn is her name, Keun, written as the Nazis were taking over in Germany, and from the point of view of a young working class girl. And the author actually fled Germany and then snuck back in because there was a price on her head, and so she came back into Germany to work for her country.
Interesting stories. Great selections. If you are looking for a great book to read, see Ann and her team at the library. If you've already been through some of these that she suggested, I'm sure you guys can help pinpoint something that will match their
Happy to help people find their next book.
Great. Library's a wonderful place to be. Ann, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it. Well, coming up next is our Vision 2020 segment, and Eric visited with Heath Garey, and they talked about waterways in the Austin area. Let's take a listen.
Queue up your own comments for On Cue and send them to us at onq@ksmq.org.
And welcome back. Time now for our Vision 2020 segment. We're going to talk about the waterways of Austin right now and some gems that our little committee group here has kind of discovered. We're going to learn a little bit more about some special waterways in Austin with Heath Garey. Embrace and Maintain Our Waterways Committee. Welcome.
Thank you.
Your other world, you're at Hormel Foods Corporation, so this is a little diversion for you.
That's right.
Your work here. Your committee has identified some waterways that might really become centerpieces for Austin moving forward. Why are waterways important to our community?
Well, waterways, especially in this community, are a great asset that we have more opportunity and potential to utilize than we currently are. The Waterways overall committee has got several subcommittees broke out to take on specific tasks involving or regarding our waterways here in town. And the one specific subcommittee that I'm a part of is more of enhancement. We want to be able to, spruce up or enhance our waterways to bring people into town, into the community, not just, but certainly also be able to, make them better for the people that live in this community, to utilize them for things such as canoeing, kayaking, fishing, but also to get that outside community in to experience all the great things that Austin, the community, has to offer.
And we have pictures here, folks. We won't say right away. Do you know where that is? Viewers at home, you probably do. You see the road there. Take it away, Heath. What are we looking at here?
What we're looking at right now is the 4th Avenue Dam. This is really one that is a highlight of our subcommittee. Being in the heart of the community or the city, and that a lot of people get to see it. And there's a lot of potential here, anywhere from the dam itself to sprucing it up or making it look nicer, all the way to the old mill floor that's there that we already have potential opportunities with. This is an area that we also have a block wall or brick cement wall coming away from. A lot of opportunities here that we might be able to anywhere from put in portages to maybe rest stop areas for waterway users.
All right, and this is a different view or different location entirely.
Correct.
What are we looking at?
What we're looking at now is the Ramsey Dam out near the old mill. great opportunities here, and that for people that kind of want to get more out of town, more into the country setting to possibly use for canoeing, kayaking, fishing.
But you have to change, do you have to change the look of it, or is it just a matter of promoting that it's there?
Sure, both. We want to promote so that people are aware of more of the opportunities with the waterways in our community, but at the same time we want to put in maybe better access points, fishing piers, something to give more accessibility to people that want to enjoy our waterways.
Wildwood Park.
Yep, this is a great picture of Wildwood Park. Great water access. There's already a park there for families and children to enjoy, and again another great point that we could possibly have a portage access and that for people to enjoy.
And when you say portage access, what does that mean?
A lot of times people that want to put in or take out a canoe or a kayak to utilize the water, what we want to do possibly is define these areas a little bit better so that people see that there's one specific spot in a location that would make it easier or more accessible for them to utilize.
Oh, and that it's okay.
Correct.
To canoe
also.
too. Just
absolutely.
Okay, one more here, I think.
This is the East Side Lake Dam and surrounding bridge area. There's already some work here that's going to be taking place from what we've been told with the bridge itself, but this is an area that we want to try to enhance and spruce up a little bit. There's some steps there and some fencing that we'd like to either replace or at least make better.
Well, thanks so much, Heath. It's been
Absolutely.
A pleasure, and it's great with all the Vision 2020 committees to think about, visualize what might be.
Absolutely. A lot of opportunities out there, a lot of great potential.
Great, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. This is On Cue. I'm Eric Olson. See you next time.
On Cue is a production of KSMQ Television in Austin, nonprofit public television.